Welcome to Prepare to Read, everybody. Last time I did an absolutely terrible job at introducing us in our first episode. So to kind of recap on that a bit, we are a first-time reader podcast. So specifically in this one, we're going to be talking through Way of Kings. I've already read it, the whole series, but my friend here, Jacob,
I have
give
not
your
read it.
yeah, he has not read it, so it's his first time going through them. Hopefully we can rope him in through all of them. He's only a few chapters in, so we'll go ahead and get his opinions and his thoughts on it today. But before we jump into that, we wanted to thank everybody, the 10 subscribers that we did gain on our first video,
Woo!
100 or
Hey,
so views.
10's a milestone. That's a
Yeah, 10
milestone,
is a
right?
milestone. And we also got a few comments, so we wanted to just briefly touch on those. Charles Nick 88 clarified that Zeth's name is pronounced Zeth and not Zeth with an S. The S is silent. Does that
Oh, so
improve the name for you,
Zeth.
Jacob?
Zeth?
Zeth.
See, I
Zeth.
thought it was Seth. Um, no, it's not just that part. It's also son. Like that's also a little silly.
The son
But
son
it
of
it
Son Shinovar.
yeah. So it's like a little bit better. Like I like knowing how to pronounce the name now. I don't know if I'll ever see it again because he doesn't come up in these chapters that we're covering. Um, but yeah, thanks for the
All right,
comment,
no
sir.
comment. And
Thanks for the
then
comment.
thank you, Charles. And Rosemary Allen commented that remember that lash can also mean to fasten something securely. What do you think about
Right.
that one?
Because last episode, I was thinking maybe lash refers to the torment that the heralds, like, was hinted at that they experience, as in, like, whipping. Um, and that makes a lot more sense, what she had said, because it was like he was connecting himself to these objects gravitationally, or connecting them to other things. So that makes sense. Like he is fastening them to other things. And I didn't know lash could mean that. Actually, I actually did a Reddit post of like basically my thoughts, and I got that a lot too. So it's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so thank you for the comments. Always feel free to comment. We like to talk about what we're reading, and you guys can also give us your thoughts. But in the last
definitely.
chapter or the last episode, we covered the prelude and the prologue. So if you haven't heard our thoughts on that and you want to, you can go ahead and find that on our channel or on Spotify. And today we're getting into part 1, Above Silence. And we're going to be talking about chapter 1 through chapter 5. And yeah, so I'll go ahead and introduce the first chapter and then we'll give our thoughts, bounce back and forth, and go through these. So, chapter 1 is called Storm Blessed. And this one is a bit different than the other chapters. It opens from a different character's point of view named Sen, who's a new recruit in Bright Lord Amaram's army. And he is kind of fish out of water, finding his bearings, what's going on around here. But he knows that he's in the squad of Kaladin Stormblessed. And yeah, so he's getting a lot of contacts, what's going on. And then from there, one of the sergeants in the squad, Dalit, pretty much is guiding Sen through this initial encounter. They're joined by Kaladin. They discuss a couple of tactics, and then the battle begins. And one of the main selling points of this squad is that Kaladin's squad does not lose a single man. So a big part of this chapter is kind of establishing who Kaladin is through the point of view of another character. After that, an enemy Bright Lord appears, and Kaladin and his squad try to defeat him, but they are hindered, however, by the arrival of a shard bearer. And at that point, Sen blacks out from blood loss and the scene cuts out. That's where it ends. So you want to go ahead and start us off, Jacob, with your thoughts?
Um, yeah, I think I agree with you. I think this is a creative way to. It does like the kind of. I feel like TV shows do this a lot now too, where it's like, hey, we're following this character in episode 1, and at the end, they usually die, and then it's like, oh man, it's actually about this other character who was a side character in episode 1 that becomes, our main point of view or protagonist. I don't know if that'll be the case moving on with Way of Kings, but that's what it looks like this did, and I appreciate that. I think it's a creative way. Like I'm not tired of it yet. You could say it's kind of tropey, but I like that. I think this chapter did a great job of capturing the atmosphere of what a battle would feel like as a new recruit, especially in
Hmm.
this world, because it's like I feel like this world is really almost sci-fi fantasy. Like it's not just fantasy, so it's a little different of how things are done. I originally thought this was the war of like because in the previous chapter, King Gavilar was killed,
Hmm.
assassinated. So I thought this was going to be like the Parshendi and the Lethi duking it out,
Well,
but it turns
it's
out it
hinted at
wasn't. It is hinted that that's taking place, but like they're
somewhere
not
else.
there, right? So like that was really interesting to me because I was like, it seems like this big thing, and they're like, it's just like a border conflict, like we're just fighting over territory. I know that they say that. That's definitely going to be like a. Is that really what was going on here? Like I think maybe if we come back later, it's going to be like there was actually some stuff going on here that might have been a little more important than it was
Well,
hinted
it
at
seems like they're
originally.
infighting
Like
because
like
Sen
a
is a
civil
new
conflict.
recruit. Yeah, because Sen is a new recruit in Bright Lord Amaram's army, and
Hmm.
later on, an enemy Bright Lord appears.
Yeah,
So I would think that it's an internal conflict then. Like there's
yeah,
fighting within the same faction.
yeah. That's what it sounds like. Like it's like, hey, we're Alethi, and it sounds like this. Like I guess I don't know like a province, like a house. Like in Game of Thrones, where it's like we're all part of Westeros, but like House Stark and House so and so are kind of duking it out right now to figure it out, and we'll let them do that. But if we need them, we're gonna call them, and they better come. I don't know how true that is, but it is. I thought it was interesting that we open up here and not like why. I think that's going to be important eventually.
Why do you think the
Um,
Bright Lords are fighting against each other?
well, I think it's that thing where a king's dead, and as our boy Littlefinger once said famously, chaos is a ladder. So I think like there's opportunity here, to
Mm-hmm.
make your moves and like yeah, like it's almost like a fresh start in a very violent way to prove, hey, we're gonna take over this while they're focused on this over here. So
Okay.
I think that's why. Um, I had some. Do you have anything else?
Yeah. So one of my favorite things about this chapter is, and if you've read the second chapter, is we're kind of starting at Kaladin's high point and we're establishing who he is as a character through the points of view of other people. So we're seeing the character of Kaladin, like he has not lost a single man, that he likes to pull in new recruits from other areas of their military that he thinks need help, to show them the
Mm-hmm.
ropes, to give them a chance where they wouldn't have a chance elsewhere. So we're establishing a lot about who Kaladin is and kind of the values that he upholds. And they also established that Kaladin is a great fighter because
Yeah, and
he,
oh,
oh,
go for
go
it.
for
Sorry,
it.
sorry, sorry.
Oh, just that
Um,
he fights with the spear and that he takes out, I think, like 6 enemies that were trying to kill Sen. Whereas I think a lot of other people would have just been like, that guy's dead. He's done. I'm moving on.
yeah, and I definitely think there's a hint of like he has like a magical aura around him. If I'm not
Yeah, they
wrong.
they kind of hint at there's something different about him, and you could
Yeah,
tell through like everybody in his squad is like Kaladin. Oh, they say he's storm blessed. He's
yeah,
storm
that's his
blessed. He has
nickname.
something about him that if
Hmm.
you're in this squad, you're good.
But not enough to beat a shard bearer, which is interesting. So it's not like he's not like our boy Zeth. He's not like
Hmm.
him where okay, yeah, he has these powers, but he's not as like trained, I guess. But it does bring up the question or this, the thought that like, okay, obviously Kaladin has seen war, but he seems young, and it's like, where was this war? When did this happen?
And
So
also, they brought up that he has other skills, like he's very knowledgeable about medical
yeah,
procedure.
yeah, you get that really in depth in the next coming chapters, but I think he does like pack Sen's wound at one point, and then also he can read glyphs, which seems like a really like whoa, he can read glyphs. That's interesting. It's commented upon. So he seems like he's been around, but then like I said, they call out his age that he looks young, so
Hmm.
it's like interesting. Interesting thoughts there. Um,
So
I
after
will like
this,
to
no,
no
go
go
for it.
no go for it. Oh, okay,
I was
I'll
gonna
go.
change topics, so you can go for it.
No, I was too. That's fine. Just I'll
Oh,
let you.
okay.
I'll let you drive. I'll let you drive
I
if
was
it's
just
the
going to
word.
comment on the kind of last part of this one is that the shard bearer shows up, which is kind of the big moment, and then Sen blacks out, and that's when the scene ends.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think happens?
Oh,
He
I think they
blacks
got.
out. We don't see.
I think they got obliterated. And I
Okay.
think pulling from the next chapters that I've read, it that's what it sounds like. He at one point, like again, assuming you've read the chapters we're covering, so I have no. Like, this is spoiler filled. Um, I think he talks about like everybody died pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And I might be wrong. I think it was actually kind of a lot of chapters to cover, so I might be remembering that incorrectly, but I'm pretty
So,
sure.
why is Kaladin alive, though?
So I think, okay, this is where like I think we're gonna get into theories where like I think this was a hit job. You know what I mean? I think it's almost hinted because who's he fighting? I got a little confused, right? And I'll say that I like this about the chapter as well is that it was okay with confusing you, and I think that was intentional because you're from Sen's point of view. That it just throws you in there. You get brief names and sometimes just descriptions of like what's going on. Like you don't find out the Parshendi thing at first, like it's just like, oh, they're over there, the enemy's over there, and it's like, oh, like you really feel like what's happening. It sounds like his squad got betrayed almost,
Hmm.
because I think even then, like he's fighting for Amara. Is that what it is?
Amaram.
Amaram. And I could have sworn in chapter 4, Kaladin talks about like, hey, we heard about like what Amaran did to you, and he's like, how did you know that? So to me, it sounds like he got betrayed, but I might be just like misunderstanding that at this point. So
Yeah.
I think it was targeted, in some way or form, whether it's I'm misunderstanding or hey, we've heard about this fighter, like we need him gone, basically. Or maybe he escaped, maybe he deserted, you know what I mean? Like at one point he gave up and ran away after he lost everybody.
Well,
So,
something else I'll add in that might contribute to that theory is I think they touch in this chapter on the idea of light eyes and dark eyes.
yeah, that's another thing I have. It's later on, I think, when in my notes of Shallan's chapter, where I'm like, what is it? And I think Kaladin hates light eyes.
Yeah. So there's a bit of like social divide.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that's classic fantasy stuff. I don't really know where that comes from yet because it's like what we know is that light eyes or dark eyes can't hold swords. Don't know why, but I think Seth brought that up, or Zeth brought that up, and then I think Sen brought that up when he was looking at like the forces that were lined up. It was like, oh, the dark eyes with their spears. Um,
Hmm.
so there's something there, like obviously that's hey, we're lesser, and that of course like we see that throughout with like the Parshmen and then the Parshendi. Like it's very very racist,
Hmm.
very very racist.
The Parshmen are a group of Pershendi.
Yeah, but they're also
Yeah.
like they're treated different than Parshendi. You get me? Like
Yeah.
there is like a hierarchy there, and I will say so. I posted this on Reddit. I did get confirmation, and apparently they only confirmed it because it's like immediately answered that Parshendi and Parshmen are a different race than humans. They're not just
Yeah.
like a subset. So I think I was like iffy on that last episode, but that was confirmed. So if
Yeah.
anybody else was iffy, FYI. Yeah, I don't really know what the difference is between light eyes and dark eyes as like socially. Like I get like obviously, hey, dark eyes seem to be beneath them, and I think like light eyes are the only ones that can be like bright lords or whatever.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think there's more to learn there, that I don't fully understand. It is interesting though.
Yeah. And I agree with you that I really like that this chapter, for one, was a different point of view because I thought it was a cool way to establish the character of another of Kaladin.
Hmm.
And also that they just throw you in there. They're not explaining like, oh, you're in Amaram's army, and Amaram is this person who lives here who did this, who does this for these people. Like it's just,
Yeah,
hey, you're here, you're with Amaram, and that's it. And they do establish Kaladin, but it's because it's kind of immediately relevant. So yeah, I think that shows like good awareness on his writing style that he wants you to kind of be immersed.
Right. Yes. I again, it reminds me of Dune, where it's like you're not going to get explained every little thing because the characters whose heads you're in already understand this. So why would they be like, giving you bullet points of who these people are and why? Um, yeah.
And
So
that's reflected
I do like
in
that.
Kaladin or in Shallan's chapter. Because in that one, you are getting a lot more of, hey, I've
Yeah.
never been in this city and now I'm getting thrown all of this info.
Hmm.
But before we get
Definitely.
there, are you ready to move on to chapter 2?
Yes. Well, one second before we do, I have one last thing to mention. Um, I have a note here that it's like, they want to get to the Shattered Plains. Kaladin wants to get to the Shattered Plains, so that drove a lot of their decision making in this fight.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that the Shattered Plains is where the actual war between the Alethi and the Parshendi is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, so like Kaladin was like, we're gonna do good so that we get sent there. I'm interested as to why he wants to be there. If it's just like, hey, young gung ho guy trying to fight for his country, but he doesn't seem like someone who wants to fight for his country right now. You know what I mean? Like that's not the vibe I get from this chapter or the chapters I've read
Mm-hmm.
um, moving forward. So, also a little note in here, like I had said previously that I think we're gonna have like a reborn hero. Is this our reborn hero? I don't think so. But just keeping that thread going of hey, that's a big theory. I think is gonna happen at some point.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm ready to move on.
Okay. Well, chapter 2, Honor is Dead, is a continuation of Kaladin. It takes place about 8 months later. So a good amount of time has passed since Kaladin got dropped in the field. And
Mm-hmm.
Kaladin is now a slave in a caravan, and he's awaiting to be sold. And he's trying to hold on to who he is. He doesn't want to think like these slaves. He wants to kind of uphold what he was. But 8 months later, he's been through a lot. He's seen a lot. He's kind of lost his fight. And when approached by another slave that's trying to find out who the heck Kaladin is, he kind of just tells him, I have no plans to escape. It's not going to work. I have tried it. And a lot of people are just trying to get to know Kaladin, and he's kind of a closed book. He doesn't want to respond to people. He doesn't want to tell them their stories, and he doesn't want to be like them. He sees kind of how they act about food and all of that, and he almost looks down upon it. Now he does find a leaf, or I don't remember if he found it or was given to it, of blackbane, and blackbane is kind of a poisonous herb.
Mm-hmm.
And Tavlak, what I don't remember the name of his slave trader.
Yeah, I think it's. I listened to another podcast like from chapters 1 through whatever. While I was reading this one too, just to hear their thoughts, which I probably won't do again. But I think they pronounced it Tavlakov.
Okay,
Again, his
Tavlakov.
his
That
names,
one's
man.
that's
His
a hard one to
names.
say. That's a tricky one. Um, Tavlakov is his slave trader, and typical treats the slaves like crap. There's a sick slave. He wants to just leave him to die because he doesn't want the other ones to get sick.
He beats the shit out of
And
him.
oh, he
Actually,
does. Okay, he does
yeah,
that too.
he gets his mercenary to just bash his head in after Kaladin told him how to
Oh
help
yeah, he
him.
kills him, and Kaladin's like, "You
Yeah,
could have saved him. Why did you do
yeah.
that?" And yeah, okay, so that's Tavlakov, and pretty much Kaladin very upset, wants to kill him, and yeah. So the other kind of big thing that's added to that chapter is the appearance of a windspren, and this is kind of now introducing the idea of spren. I
Hmm.
think that there's some other spren that come up. I think one of them was like pain spren.
Yeah, you
Um,
get this is the first time you get an explanation of a little bit of what they are because before it's just like oh yeah they're there and it's like
yeah,
again these POV characters aren't really going to call it out but I think Kaladin calls it out because this one's acting weird.
yeah, and that was what was different is that this spren seems more intelligent.
Hmm.
She also knows his name, which Kaladin is kind of like, what the heck? And she does, I believe, bring up some previous things that have happened. So we can kind of assume this Spren was maybe following him or is attached to him. And she kind of is also blown away by what's going on. I don't think she even entirely understands. Like, I don't know why I'm thinking or feeling these things.
Hmm.
So yeah, so want to go ahead and jump in on your thoughts? That's kind of what happened in this chapter.
Yeah, so I'll pick up with the Spren thing because it's actually the second thing that I have on my notes here for chapter 2. And I'm going to kind of try to give a guess at what they are and why they exist. So this is not an Earth-like world, which I think is pretty apparent. It's not like Game of Thrones where it's trying to be more grounded than others. Like, this is a fantastical world. Like I said, almost borderline science fiction stuff. Um, my best guess at what Spren are is that they are a physical manifestation of unseen phenomena. I don't know if that is, but like, because we have emotion ones, right? We've seen those. We've seen fear and we've seen pain, but then we also see like the quote 4 element ones, like wind, fire. I'm pretty sure there's water ones. I think he mentions water ones at the time, but like, like those like elements, you could say. Um, like, so is there more to them? Like, like, what I'm curious is, was there always Spren in the world, or did something happen that like led to the emergence of Spren? Because like I said, it's like, it's almost like you're seeing into this veil. Like, okay, this is gonna get really weird, but why not? Fuck it. Like, um, how like there's 3 dimensions in this world, and they say like, well, there's other dimensions, we just can't perceive them. Like, I feel like this is what's going on here. Is like, we can't see pain, but we know it's a thing, and then like now it's like, well, now you can see it, like, in this world you can see these things, you can see these phenomena that, like, yeah, we know they exist, but we just can't, like, so that's how I feel about them. I think this one, right, I think so based off that, right, we know that they can be elements or emotions at this point. um I don't think it's a win spread. I think he thinks that's what it is, but they're present in like levels of high emotion. He can only see this one. He knows that nobody else can see this one, and I think it's like depression. That would be my guess.
A
Like,
depression spread.
hmm
But she's
I'm
pretty
serious.
upbeat. She's pretty happy and stuff.
Yeah, like, but maybe it's a last ditch effort to like, but because she asked him, she's like, "Why aren't you crying?" At one point, like she asked him that stuff, and then I'm gonna jump forward a little bit. Sorry, but in chapter 4, when we start getting to the Shattered Plains, she mentions like, there's more of you. There's more like you out there in this camp. There's a lot of you out there, and I'm like, what does that mean? Like, is it the emotion that he's feeling that's out there? Like people who have lost themselves. Um, that's my
Hmm.
crackpot right there for that.
Well, to add off of that, I think the Spren are really cool from kind of a visual point, because just 2 chapters in, I can already visualize in my head like the Shattered Plains, this kind of barren, cracked plain, and then these little Spren that pop up everywhere for little things. So he's already
Hmm.
doing a great job at kind of defining his own visual aesthetic for
Yeah, like
his world.
stylizing. Hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool. Also, just the idea of the Spren, these manifestations of like the different emotions and all that, I think is really cool also.
It is.
But yeah, I think you covered the Spren well, as far as what it was, kind of some of the mystery around it.
Hmm.
Uh, and yeah, I think it's also a cool literary device in that you have Kaladin, who's very closed off, doesn't want to open up, and then you have this Spren that's trying to pull everything out of him. So
Hmm.
you're able to kind of learn more about Kaladin in a way that you weren't able to through the other characters, through the other
Right.
slaves. So,
And
and go for it.
well, she's like attached to him,
Yeah.
like it's been a thing. Like, she's been following him. So, like, again, I don't think like they manifest where the thing is taking place, and I think the thing is taking place inside Kaladin. Whatever is causing this, like, it is his manifestation of something. Whether, like I said, it's depression or some like higher calling thing. But
Hmm.
I think that's what's going on.
Yeah. No, yeah, and also jumping over to Kaladin, I think his character is really interesting, but in a place that I guess you would kind of expect, considering what happened 8 months later. You can tell that he feels like he failed everybody, which
Hmm.
you could argue if he did or didn't, because they're all dead. So something happened. And he also brings up something else. Besides just saying that he failed his squad, he also mentions another name, Tien.
Yeah, yeah. He
So what do you
mentions.
think about that?
So this is the thing where I start getting really weird with Kaladin, because it's like he says he's failed time and time again. Like everybody's died time and time again. I don't know if I wrote the exact quote here, but I don't think I did. Um, Obviously, this is someone who is close to him, right? I don't know. I don't like. There's not enough to speculate on. Like, is it a lover? Is it a friend? Is it a brother? Like family member. I'm assuming it's a guy name. I don't know, but uh, it could be a girl name. That's a very ambiguous. But yeah, man. Like, I think obviously he's lost a lot, and this is the thing. Again, it's like he doesn't sound like he's 19 years old, which I think he says either in this chapter or in chapter 4. Which, here we go, going up to the next spot. Sorry if I am not hitting that correctly, but this is where my mind's going. I have it written
You
here.
good?
Literally, like after that line is brought up, I go, is Kaladin potentially one of our heralds? Because, one, Kalak was the guy we read about in the prologue, Kalak, and then Kaladin. It's like that name's
Yeah,
there. Like it's
very
the
similar.
same name, just with a little whoop at the end. Um, so like maybe he's 19 now, you know, in this life, like he's 19, but maybe he's not always 19, or maybe he just looks 19. I don't know, because like we know that the heralds can be reborn, like they die and then they come back, and they die and they come back. So maybe this is just his life where he's 19 years old, but he's had
Yeah.
all these other things that he's experienced, and he knows so much about the world. He is so like Shallan is seeing things and it's like, wow, like I've never seen these things before. And then Kaladin is like, he just has an answer for everything. Like the only thing he's like really weirded out by is this weird spren he's never seen. But like he
Hmm.
talks about the bugs, he talks about the ground. Like he hasn't been to the Shattered Plains, but he knows about the Shattered Plains. Um, and like he can read glyphs like at such a young age. It's just really interesting. There's definitely
Yeah.
a lot more to this man than we're being led on right now. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, in this chapter, I think it's kind of just that showing where Kaladin's headspace is at. How he's
Mm-hmm.
trying to kind of hang on to who he is. He's starting to converse with his spren, who is pulling out that he's depressed and why is he not acting the way that he is anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
he's just struggling with kind of loss and his failure. And yeah, but you can tell through the way that he responds to the slave getting beat to death that he still has a level of, I guess you would say, honor, and that
Yeah,
he respects life.
definitely. And I think that comes from, we are told that, or not told, but he talks about how his father taught him healing. So his father was obviously some sort of healer, so that I think that was instilled in him. That is like a part of him.
Yeah,
So seeing those things like being unable to heal someone or being able to heal them and that getting taken away from him, like still hits him to his core, even though other things he's like, I give up, I
yeah.
give up on this.
And I
Um,
think he even becomes a bit conflicted when he wants to kill the slaver, if I remember correctly. Like he's conflicted by wanting to kill the slaver. Is that
mhm.
correct, or no? That doesn't.
I can't remember exactly. I'd have to look. I didn't write
Okay.
that down in my notes. But I don't know. I don't know if you're wrong or not. Um, but yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. I feel like we learn a lot about him in this chapter, um, just
Yeah.
from his yeah. But I will want to talk about something a little bit bigger in this chapter that gets mentioned. We hear the word Vorin again, and we heard it last, I think, in the prologue when we're talking about the heralds. Like it's Vorin worship, which sounds like religion to me.
Hmm.
Um, this gets brought up in the context of Vorin rules on slavery. Um, so it's a religion, but it also has policies. So it sounds like, and I don't know if this is just a Lethe area, but like it's a government by religion type thing going on. Um, I just thought that was interesting, like because I was like pretty sold that it was a religion, and then they bring it up, and it's like, oh, actually, it's a like they have policies too. And then when we get to Shallan, um, we hear about heretics, which I think is interesting. So yeah, I think that's about all I have. But I will say we do get a mention of Talon, the guy who got sent back, the only one from the heralds in the prelude.
Oh, we do? How so?
Yes, just in the form of a constellation, and it's called Talon Scars. Talons names. Brandon, let's get better. Scar, and it's just a swath of deep red stars in like a line. So I'm just curious,
Okay.
like if it was called out again. Kaladin noticed it. If he's a herald, maybe he's thinking of his buddy that they sent back. If he's not, it seems important. It got called out.
Okay. Well, to close out that chapter, pretty much Kaladin's angry and he ends up crushing the Blackbane, the poisonous leaf, against the bars of the wagon. He loses most of it, and that's where we leave Kaladin. So, moving over to chapter 3, City of Bells. This is the
Woo!
first Shallan chapter, POV, and I think
Yeah.
this one drops a lot about the world, at least this specific city. So, Shallan Devar arrives in Carbranth, the City of Bells, and she's going through a bit of culture shock. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on around her that she has not seen. And when she came over here, she was on a ship with Captain Tozbek of the Wind's Pleasure. And she gets word that Yasna, which is the lady that she's trying to find, she's been chasing her for several months and that she is still in the city. So she's kind of honed in on this person that she's been searching for. And through being on the ship, she kind of gets introduced a bit more to some of the, I guess you could say, less formal people that exist in this world, like the sailors. And she starts to make her way over to the palace to speak with Yasna, with one of the sailors of Captain Tozbek. And as she gets there, we start to learn that Shallan wants to request to be Yasna's ward, which we could guess is maybe like an apprentice of a sort. And Yasna tells her to meet her in Dumadari. And Shallan has been chasing her from city to city ever since. So it seems like Yasna told her, meet me here. And then she went on this chase to try to track her down. Anyways, Shallan, the reason she's here is she's very nervous about the finances of her house. So her father recently passed away, and because of that, their house is falling apart. And she needs to find some source of income or some type of political advantage against the other houses because they're kind of moving in on her. Reminds me very Game of Thrones. And if she doesn't, her house is not going to last long. So they're kind of on their last thread. And then from there, she reveals that her request to be Yasna's ward is somehow related to solving the house's crisis. But in this chapter, at least, she doesn't reveal exactly how that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And the chapter closes out with Shallan turning the corner, and there's Yasna. So a lot happens in this chapter, real similar to Kaladin's chapter in kind of defining who Shallan is, some of her thoughts, where she is at. I think she's shown to be a bit more of a gray character, maybe, than Kaladin, a little bit less stuck in her ways, but more open to learning about other stuff. And yeah, so go ahead and take it over from here, Jacob.
I'm going to touch on what you said about her being a gray character. I don't see that yet, but I do think, I mean, Kaladin's in a pretty tough spot right now, but she's got a lot more to fight for right now, and she's desperate. And I think a big thing that you didn't bring up was like she needs to keep her father's death a secret too, because as
Yeah.
soon as people find out, like it'll be like a feast of crows, if you will. Um, this chapter, I'll say like it's interesting that it's here. I think in this section of the book, and again, like maybe I'm reading too deep, but like I think everything goes in a certain place for a reason. It sounds like Brandon Sanderson is a very, he planned this out very much so. So I'm like, why here? Because then we go right back to Kaladin after this. So like I was really reading this chapter as like, okay, why does this need to be here and not flip flop those chapters?
Mhm.
And I can't figure it out. I really can't figure it out. But
I think it's just a
um,
part of kind of the epic fantasy genre. When you have multiple POVs, you're jumping between them.
mhm,
I I agree with you because I remember when I read this, jumping into this, it was a bit of a shock of like what's going on. Like I care about Kaladin now, and now you're giving me this other character. And yeah, I think I agree. He could maybe be a touch better at it. Um, the second trilogy of Red Rising does a POV swap also in different chapters, but a lot of people praise Pierce Brown for it never feels like we're cutting to another character at the wrong time. Like when we're
mhm.
still interested in that character, it always feels like, all right, this cut makes sense.
Yeah,
And yeah,
and like I said, like it's like I don't know if it's bad right now or purposeful. And I'm not saying it's like, oh, I hate this. I think he did it wrong. Like obviously he knows what he's doing. You know what I mean? But it's just I'm like, okay, I'm coming at this with a high level of, hey, this guy has plotted this out to like the freaking word. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Moving forward with his, so it's like we're not like there's not a clear break in Kaladin's thing where I feel like in chapter 4 you get that like okay we're arriving at this place that things are going to change, but we're going to swap over and then swap right back right after. So it's interesting. And
well,
it
it
was a
it
little bit
kind
of a
of
like
could,
a switch of it's just interesting. You were
yeah.
going to say?
I could think maybe a few things. This is more like not really the immediate chapter, but if we were writing and kind of plotting out this book, I
Mm-hmm.
think maybe two things. One, Kaladin's traveling right now. You know, he's on his
Mm-hmm.
way, he's on this wagon. So by cutting chapters, you can kind of argue that
Past time.
it's giving time. Yeah, a sense of like, hey, this is going to take a little time. Or the other thing is he's probably also thinking of, I have to kind of give people an understanding of this world in kind of a specific time set for them to like understand stuff later. So maybe that's why he needs to cut here, so that way we can learn about things that are going to come up later.
Mm-hmm.
But
And
yeah,
that's where I ended up determining like we do get the mention of high storms here before Kaladin experiences a high storm in his,
yeah,
and it wouldn't make sense. Like we said, I think he's really committing to the if the character knows what's going on, they're not just gonna verbalize it to you, the reader. So it's like, hey, we learned about the city of bells and why it's called that is because of the high storms that come through, and it's supposed to warn people. And then like boom, we get a high storm. You don't have to explain it. We get some more like mythological stuff in the next chapter about these high storms, but we are explained the basic science, not science, but like phenomena
yeah.
at this chapter.
And one specific thing I wanted to mention about kind of the culture that's introduced in this chapter is it this chapter though, actually?
No, you better be careful. You better be careful.
It's not, it's a detail, but I just find it really cool is how they kind of establish men and women
Oh yeah,
norms in the world.
their like roles and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and
How they're
what's
saying like
proper
there's the
and what's
feminine
not.
arts and men don't really read,
Yeah,
which we've already been told that Kaladin reads glyphs, so that's kind of like a all right.
yeah.
And
It's a very
also go for it.
yeah. Brandon was just like, you know what? What if we just made this the worst? It's racist. We got slavery. We got defined hardcore gender norms. Like he's just like, yo, let's just do it, man. Because the guy like
And
things when
then
they're
there's also the safe hand.
yeah, which
That one's always been kind of a funny one to me. Yeah, the whole safe hand. I gotta keep my safe hand covered, and
yeah.
it's cool though because it's something that is not seen like in our world, but you
Mhm.
see just how like personal that is to them. You know, to where they like, yeah, it's not something we immediately understand because it's in our world, but because of stuff in our world, we can see why it would be so
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I don't know, but it's a cool thing. I think that's really cool, just world building on his part. So
Yeah, I will say that that's one thing that you get here is hey, you kind of get a lot of cultures at once in a place, so now we get to see what is the social norm, and it really sounds like, and I honestly don't know where we're located right now on the map. I don't think I checked, but like it does seem like the Alethi way, and I don't know if this is Alethi or Vorin
Mhm.
culture, that like that seems like the norm. Like if you're not with the was it black hair and stuff, with light
Yeah.
eyes, it's kind of like you're probably not doing the best.
And
Um,
you mentioned Alethi. So really quick, we do get the name Yasna Kolin. So it's
mm-hmm.
established that Yasna is from the Kolin family. And
Yeah.
we believe that the Kolins, because that's what the name of the old king was, are the Alethi. And the Alethi are fighting in the Shattered Plains.
Mm-hmm.
So what is Yasna doing running around over here by Corbrandt?
Well, she sounds estranged. She's a heretic.
Oh, yeah. Hey, that's chapter 5.
Is it?
But
I
yes.
thought this is discussed here. Like, I'm pretty sure it's discussed that, like, hey, she's a heretic. Is she? Oh, I think she asked, like, is she gonna make me denounce my religion to be her ward?
Mhm.
Again, like, big thing. Like, I talked about this before. Like, huge, huge things on religion here. I think it's gonna play a massive role in the story. It really seems like it. Um, yeah, so it's a thing. It's like again, government and religion seem to be extremely tied in this world, or at least in this province country. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I think she sounds like someone who's foregone that family's way of life. So I think I'm
Mhm.
like, yeah, it's just it's interesting. I don't really know what's gonna come of that, but Yasna sounds like a more great character than Shallan does right now.
So we haven't really touched on it, but this is Shallan's introduction character. So he talks a lot about the world building, but I want to ask you, what do you think about Shallan, like herself?
Um, I jury's still out. I don't. The one thing that the one thing that like got me is they keep saying how funny she is. She hasn't made me laugh yet. Like reading it, so it's like I can tell. I can tell Brandon likes to do that, where it's like, hey, we'll have other people say this about a character, to kind of hit it home, but she hasn't said something funny. So I don't know. Maybe Brandon's not a funny guy himself, but at least to me, I know humor is subjective. So it's like I'm not saying if you think anything she says is not like funny that you're wrong, but just hasn't gotten me. So it's a little like a disconnect there of like everybody's like, oh, like these sailors who I know have to be saying funnier stuff, or they'll be like, oh, she's so inappropriate, and what she says is like nothing, and it's like okay, maybe it's just very more conservative times, not politically, just conservative as far
I
as
think they say that she's inappropriate because of her position.
status.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because of status. It's that.
I mean maybe.
But I agree with
I
you.
just feel like it's really hit home, and it's not connected with what she
Yeah.
actually acts like.
No,
So
I don't remember finding her a funny character either. If anything, I thought she was more I don't know, sassy, sarcastic.
yeah, she does have the sarcasm, but it's more like rude than anything. You know what I mean? Oh, like just kind of like an asshole, I guess, in a way. But
Mhm.
not necessarily funny. I'm not saying she's an asshole, but the way her jokes are just being like, oh, you said this, and I'm taking it literally. So like, why would I do that? And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, like it's a statement. I don't know if it's funny and it's not inappropriate, but it's just a little disconnect. I don't think I dislike her character. Just they really tried to hit that home. What I do
Yeah.
like about her is she seems like she's rising up to do stuff. She's like, look, man, I gotta put the weight on my shoulders now. I don't know how this world works where in Game of Thrones, it would have been like get married. She needs to get married to someone so that they can save her house, or her brother needs to get married to a rich family, type of thing. I don't
Mhm.
know. I don't know what gives people power in this world other than being Alethi. We find out what her motive is later, and we can talk about that later. But um,
Yeah.
yeah, I like that she's out here. she's trying to fix things, and I think that's obviously like a likable trait. So still jury out on her personality though.
More than her immediate character, what I liked most about her is just the context surrounding her, like her house falling apart, her needing to figure something out to make sure that her house doesn't disappear. So, yeah. Anything else you want to say on that chapter?
Well, just that I like she's in a desperate position, and same with Kaladin too. But Kaladin seems a lot more like he's not desperate. It's almost like he's lost than anything. You know, I feel like
Being a slave is
Shallan.
pretty desperate, though.
Yeah, no, it is, but it's like Shallan has hope, and she knows who she is at the moment, even though her situation's desperate. And I'm not saying that's wrong of Kaladin to not feel that way, but Kaladin feels like he doesn't know who he is anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything that he stood for is gone, and I think that's why so much he's like, well, I'm not going to act a slave. That's like the last thing he has is that respect to himself of, well, I'm not going to act like a slave, even if I am one, because that's all I have left is who I think I am and how I act. And so yeah, it's a contrast, but a similar situation. So I think Kaladin, at first, a lot more stuff will happen to him, whereas Shallan, she will happen to the world, if that makes sense. She will act upon the world more than Kaladin will. At first, I think Kaladin, I mean, I don't know, but I'm assuming things are going to get different. Like he's going to get into a situation where he has a little bit more control over his destiny.
Yeah.
So
what I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but the way that Brandon structured this series is that each book belongs to a specific character, if that makes sense. So each book has a character that is kind of the focus for that book.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to guess which one it is for this book?
Well, maybe this is Kaladin on the book cover, so that'd be my guess. That's just my guess right now.
You're right.
I mean, right
Kaladin's
now.
Book.
Oh, hey. Yeah. I mean, the only guess right now would be Shallan and Kaladin. Like we've gotten the same amount of chapters of them from their POVs, so that those would be my only two guesses.
Okay.
And I've seen the second book cover, and that's a girl. So I don't know if that's Shallan, but
that's not a girl.
On the second book cover?
No.
Oh. All right, then.
That second book is good, though, man. All right. Anyway, so moving on then. Chapter 4 of the Shattered Plains. So we're back to Kaladin's POV for this one. So Kaladin, he's sitting in the slave wagon, and the caravan stops because he notices that the slaver is lost. And at this point, we get a little bit more about Kaladin, that he's pretty much telling the slaver, look, man, I know this place. I understand where we are. And when they give Kaladin the map to kind of tell them where to go, Kaladin tears it up. And he's like, nah. And smart move on his part, because now the slaver's like, dang, I need this dude now because I'm completely lost out here. Mm-hmm. And from there, Tavlok, I'm just going to call it the slaver. I can't say the name. The slaver is talking with Kaladin, and he tells him, hey, man, I'm cool with you escaping because I want revenge on Bright Lord Amaram. And yeah, so Kaladin realizes that if the slaver knows about Amaram, then he probably also knows that Kaladin isn't actually a deserter, which is supposed to be part of the reason that he is in slavery again.
Yeah, so I'm going to stop you there. Can you go back real quick? Because I was, again, very confused at the situation, and there's a lot more to read, so I didn't have the time to go back and reread this one as I did like the first two, the prologue and the prelude. Can you go back to saying he wants revenge on Amaran? And I'm going to try to find in the book real quick. And I think it's important, so that's why I'm stopping you, because this
so
changes
right
a lot
here on the summary I'm looking at, it says, in the conversation that follows, the slaver says that he is only comfortable with the idea of Kaladin escaping because he knows that he wants revenge on Bright Lord Amaram more than he does on the slaver.
Okay. Yeah,
that's
so
clarified.
I'm going to read this because I think this is important. Perhaps, deserter, perhaps you are right. This is Tvlakov, the slaver, talking. Or perhaps I simply think that if you were to get free, you would hunt down the first man who sold you to slavery. You see, High Lord Amaram, was it not? His death would give me warning so I can run. Was he not fighting for Amaram?
Yeah, he was in Amaram's army.
So that's like, was he a slave before that? I don't think so because he didn't have any brandings on him. So
He was
like,
leading a squad, so I doubt
yeah,
it.
so it's like,
So his
what
own guy
happened?
betrayed him.
Yeah, like what happened? That's so. I read that and I remember I was like maybe I'm just getting it wrong. It is so. It's so interesting. All right, sorry, continue. But
That's a
yeah,
pretty
I
messed
just
up way to betray you. Also, to
yeah.
get your
So
whole squad killed and sell you into slavery.
yeah, so like the Bright Lord was from Amaran's side and just was like, or the Shard Bearer was from Amaran's side, the side they were fighting for.
No, the shard bearer was from another Bright Lord.
Oh, okay. So that was from the other side, but then something that we don't know happened after that, and he got sold into slavery by his own person
Yep.
or the person
Yep.
he was fighting for. Whoa. Dang. All right. Sorry. I was just like, I wasn't sure. So that clears up a lot.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah, so from there, Kaladin and Tvlakov continue to talk pretty much about Kaladin's selling price. And then shortly after that, the Windsprand comes back. And apparently she left during the high storm that happened recently. And she tells Kaladin that there's a large group of people that are not very far away. And Kaladin realizes that it's an Alethi war camp and that their destination is the Shattered Plains. So Kaladin seems like he ended up where he wanted to be,
Yeah.
and not the way he probably wanted to, but he is. And the other slaves, they start to kind of express some hope that maybe they'll be treated fairly in the war camps. But Kaladin has his doubts. Okay. So thinking of the different light eyes that have proven to be corrupt in the past, which that might hint at Amaram, because Bright Lord Amaram, I would guess, is a light eyes
Yeah.
who seems like it betrayed him.
God
And
dang.
that
Storm you, light eyes.
I hate the storm you stuff. And yeah, so it ends there with his last hope that Kaladin is hanging on to is that he will be allowed to fight again. So
Mm-hmm.
Kaladin kind of has that warrior spirit. I want to get there out there and I want to fight.
Yeah. So we know that he was taught healing, right? Obviously. Where did he learn to fight? How did that get brought about? Because he fights differently than the people in these armies. So was this his dad also, or does his dad just have like really cool friends? Does he come down from like maybe he's not a herald, but from a line, like a descended line from the heralds. So like
Yeah.
maybe these other 9 people hung out and their kids, had kids who had kids who had kids, and they like were taught these things of the world, and maybe his history is lost to him, but the skills have been passed down still. So it's just interesting. It's just interesting because he's very different than everybody, and there's got to be a reason, right? And I don't think his name is a coincidence. It's just not. It's too blatant. Do you have anything to say on that, or can I go to what else I was going to bring up?
No, go for it.
So we talk about his brand here. His brand that up until this chapter, we thought was given for deserting. And Tvlakov tells him, like, I know what that brand was really for. I know it wasn't for deserting, but we're going to keep it that way for deserting because if people find out what actually happened, I'm not going to get, like, nobody's going to buy you and you're going to go for a good price. So what the hell is this brand for? I think my first thought is that maybe he killed a slave master, um, but then like he did it 8 times and he still got sold. Like they would have known that already if he killed somebody. So like, what is that brand? I think that's going to be very important. Like, is he a freak? You know what I mean? Like, is there something wrong with this dude that's like, oh shit, we don't like, what is this? What do we have here? Again, I think he's tied to the heralds. I have to at this point.
I can't imagine how upset he would be too. I'd be pissed. It's one thing to be a slave, but it's another thing to brand my forehead, like
yeah,
that just sucks.
yeah, forever you will be marked. It's crazy. So yeah, that's another thing that's like Very, very interesting. And then also, I want to talk about we experienced our first high storm, and you kind of Kaladin starts talking about the myths that are associated with them. That like big things used to walk during the high storms that were scary. Void bringers. We get that name dropped again. So again, this makes me think like if he was like Kalak reincarnated, he would know this unless they lose their memories, which I don't think they do. He would know about these things that they actually fought, these thunderclasts and stuff like that, which is what I'm assuming they're referring to through these, like
Mhm.
in this legend. So, like I said, maybe it's more of a line down the heritage than like family tree stuff more than actually being reborn from Kalak or something. I think it's interesting. The high storm is interesting. That's definitely going to play a point. I think I kind of want to get into theories after we finish going through the chapters, but I have a little something about to say about that. But no, I think this
Yeah.
chapter is very straightforward. I think it's really just kind of giving Kaladin like hope a little bit because it was pretty desperate before, and yeah.
Yeah, I think this chapter is pretty straightforward. It's just getting him somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so yeah, I mean, we get a bit more that Kaladin's useful. He knows stuff. He knows the area, so we could assume he's been there before, maybe.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's kind of more interesting what is going to happen next at the war camp.
Mm-hmm.
So
All right, I'm ready to move on. If you are, sir.
okay, cool. So last chapter for this episode, chapter 5, the heretic. And in this one, Shallan finally meets Yasna Kholin, and she admires Yasna. She's a tall, Alethi, tan skin, long dark hair.
What does she
And
say
she,
about her chest?
oh my gosh, and she is talking to a man who Shallan later identifies as King Teravangian of Carburant. Okay,
Oof.
King Teravangian. So that's another um, big leader in the world. So
Yeah.
Yasna and Teravangian seem to be negotiating over something, but Shallan can't hear it. As they begin to walk, Yasna kind of just beckons Shallan to follow. She gives me a lot of, if you read Wheel of Time, kind of Moraine vibes of like kind of very strong woman, you know. And
Oh.
after a preliminary conversation, Yasna mentions to Shallan, because she was so persistent in seeking her out, that she will give her a chance to be her ward. And Shallan's really surprised by this because she believed that she had already been accepted. She thought, hey, I've been chasing you around this whole time. I thought if I found you, I would be your ward, but that's not the case. From there, they start to talk about Shallan's transcript of her education. So Yasna has passing skill in a lot of different things. She's good in sciences and she's great at the feminine arts such as drawing and writing, but she's lacking in history and philosophy. So her transcript. And from there, they arrive at an entrance room, which is blocked off by stone. And this is where we kind of get our first glimpse of the magic. So Yasna is planning to use a soul caster to remove the stone, so that way they can get access into the room. And Yasna's soul caster transforms this stone into smoke. And that allows the king to get inside, and he's very thankful to Yasna for this. But Yasna ends up rejecting Shallan as her ward because she lacks the education in history and philosophy, which obviously Shallan's been chasing this girl around. She's not very happy about this, but she decides to continue to push, to continue to persevere. And from that point, Shallan reveals that she doesn't just want to become Yasna's ward out of scholarly pursuit, but that she wants to steal her soulcaster to help her family's finances recover.
My word. So I'll be straightforward with this. I was a little sleepy when I read this chapter. Okay, so this might have skewed my opinion of it, but I felt like the back half of this chapter was really weird, like and out of place to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it felt like, hey, we got to show magic. We got to show some magic. Like, what if was it just a boulder blocking this door? And it kind of is like, that's not a big deal. But I think everything I've read to this point has been so purposeful that was like, okay, we've hinted at these things falling, right? Like, because it's like it's built into this cliff, this temple or palace, whatever you want to call it. Um, it's built into a cliffside, and they mentioned like, hey, when the high storms happen, things can get like crazy, and like like the city's safe, but in here, like stuff can fall. Like we're in a cave. The high storm's hitting the other side of the mountain. So I'm like, is that going to come up again, or was this just an opportunity to show the Soulcaster in use? And it
Yeah.
felt like the latter to me. Of
I think
just
so too, because they need
um,
to introduce it so that Shallan can say, "I need to steal that thing."
yeah, and it's the first thing that felt very like, let's just put this together and like throw that there, and it was kind of like it was like a big like the magic itself wasn't like a cool moment. It was interesting. Like it was weird. Like okay, like we've seen the magic now, but I think the way he's introduced other concepts has been like very, very well done for me. And this was the first time where I was kind of like, is that what people use this for? Like like I don't know, but whatever. I digress. I feel like that was just a little nitpicky. But other than that, I do think it's curious. Or okay, so going on the trend, right? Kaladin, Kalak, very similar names. Shallan, Shalash, which we just mentioned in the prologue. That's the only time we've heard of her. Very similar names as well. Again, to the point where it's like I cannot. That's the thing. It's there. Um,
The rebirth thing.
the rebirth, or like you're named after these people, right? Like Shallan and Shalash. It's just too close. Kalak and Kaladin are too close. It's too close. Why doesn't Shallan know as much as Kaladin then? What if
I think
if my
she
theory
she
if my
grew up.
theory what's up?
I think it has to do with where she grew up now, because they mentioned that she grew up kind of in a smaller, more isolated place,
Yeah, but
and Kaladin was a soldier.
if my theory of like because Kaladin knows about glyphs. Kaladin knows about like I feel like he is like I feel like if Kaladin would have gone up to what's her face? Yasna, is that how you
Yasna.
say her name? He would have passed the test. He sounds like he knows history and philosophy. I don't know, but just from what he's talked about, like I think so. He knows healing. Um, so it's like if I think both of them are from this line of heralds, why does Kaladin know more than Shallan? Even though Shallan sounds like she had the resources, she sounds like she was born into a privileged area, so like she had the resources to learn these things. I don't know. It's a little odd to me that she doesn't know certain things. And why is history and philosophy so important to Yasna? Is it
Mhm.
because like she's a heretic? We know she's a heretic, right? So does she know something about the Voron religion and history that made her step away from it? Like, is that why she stepped away? And is that why she thinks like I'm not going to accept you because you don't know these things? Like
Yeah.
maybe you're not going to understand why I am the way I am and learn from me because you don't know these things. So it's just really interesting. I really I found that side interesting, and I want to get more of Yasta. I think right now, no shame to Shallan, but Yasta has my attention as far as what's going on here. I wish Brandon wouldn't have played the hey trying to steal the Soulcaster card so early. Like I get why he did because it's kind of like wants to keep you reading, but like I'm gonna read this anyways. I think it
I
would have been
do
a lot
like
more.
that aspect of the plot, though. I think the stealing the Soulcaster is interesting.
It is interesting. I think I'm a sucker for like learning tropes, like school tropes in books. So it's like, yeah, I kind of wanted that a little bit more. So I don't know if that's just going to get completely dropped, or maybe her attempt of trying to steal this thing is going to lead to her being like, you know what, that's pretty badass, man. You got some balls. Like, let's do it. I'll teach you. Um, so I don't know. We'll see. Anything else you
Yeah.
got on that chapter? And like I said, I was falling a little asleep, so I wasn't diving as deep.
Not
Um,
too much on this chapter. I
we
think
can We can talk about the magic though, because we did get some more magic, and I know he's big, and I know you like how like magic system works. So this sounds different than what, and again, we don't get Yasna's POV on this, so we just get Shallan's and what she knows about this. But she says, Let me go back here. Okay, so she's Yasna is like, gonna get rid of the stone. They know that it's gonna turn to smoke because they bring out the wet rags, which I'll just toot my own horn. I knew that was gonna happen. Like I was like, oh, wet rags, like smoke's gonna happen. What's going on? But anyways, Shallan's watching Yasna, so it's from her perspective. But she's like, she has her hand on the stone, doing some magic, and then she's like, Yasna's hand sank into the rock. Like, so it literally like went through, or did it, like that actually happened, or was it more of like a metaphorical sink? Like her energy sank into it, because it is italicized. So that I don't know,
Okay.
but and then the stone vanished. Like it didn't explode. It was just gone. Where did it go? With the smoke, I don't know. Like that's interesting to me. That is interesting to me. Like I said, I don't like the excuse of why we use the magic, but magic itself is interesting. It's definitely different
Yeah.
than what Zeth did. A
Yeah.
lot different.
No, it's definitely just a taste. I don't think they really give you any tangible like
Mm-hmm.
what the soulcaster's for, what it does, where I like what you brought up, like where did the rock go?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's just a taste.
And does Shallan think she can can she use this magic? Is this a learned skill? Is this a trait that people have? Is it like a Wheel of Time where only certain people have access to, you know, the magical sources of the world and can tap into them? Or is it like, yeah, as long as you have a soul caster and you train, you can do it? Like, what is the rules then, or what are the rules then?
I don't think
Um,
Shallan even knows the rules because it seems like she wants to. I mean, if she wants to steal the soulcaster, it's because she wants to use magic, probably.
right?
So
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
think she even understands what it is,
But that's
what it
a
does.
bold thing to go out and do and not even know if you can use it or not.
Yeah, it's
Because
a last
I
ditch
think,
effort.
yeah, essentially, like you're putting your life at risk at this. Like you're gonna steal from a wizard who just vanished a rock. Like that, I don't think they're gonna take kindly to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like I feel like she has to be confident that she can use this, right? So I'm just curious as what are the is it a learned trait? Is it a whatever? Like you're born with it or not? Can you access it? Do you like meditate on this stuff? What is it? Um, yeah, it's interesting. And like you said, there's obviously some political stuff going on here, but it's so we get such an outside view of it that I don't even
Yeah.
have like I didn't even write any thoughts on it. So like I don't even know what's going on here.
Yeah, there's name drops, but I wouldn't say anything too important. Here on the summary I'm looking at, it seems like they mention Elokar Colin. He's
Yeah,
the
her
king
brother.
of Elokar.
Yeah, right. Is that what it said? I could have sworn it was Yasna's
Um,
brother, but I was like, I didn't know there was another
well, because
brother.
Gavilar was the brother of Yasna. Yeah, the
Right,
the king that got
and
assassinated.
I'm guessing Dalinar too, right?
Yeah, I
So
would think.
then,
So
yeah, because
Elokar, I believe, is the son of Gavilar.
okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to find it real quick. Okay, yeah,
So that would be his aunt.
okay, yeah. So the gemstones on his fingers, the way he carried himself, the way other light-eyed attendants deferred to him. Stormfather Shallan thought this has to be the king himself, not Yasna's brother Elokar. So not Yasna's brother.
Oh, so
So this,
Yasna is the daughter of Gavilar.
yeah, I'm guessing, right?
Okay.
That's what that means.
Yeah.
And it's been
Okay.
5 years.
Good
It's been five
clarification.
years since. Yeah, that's someone hasn't read. Just kidding. It's a confusing man. There's a lot of names getting dropped, so it's like gotta keep a track.
Yeah, they're dense. There's a lot happens.
Mm-hmm.
But okay. So yeah, that name drop, I think that's a really good connection for us to make sure we got. Elokar is the brother of Yasna, and they're
And he
both the kids of Gavilar.
and Elokar did become king. So Dalinar. So yeah, that's what happened. I know we kind of I speculated like, does King Gavilar not want him to be the king and wants his brother to be the king? Like like I said, his dying words were to his brother and not his either of his kids because he had two. Now we know he had
Yeah.
two. So like that's crazy. It's crazy to me. I want to know
And then
why.
the last name I would think is important is King Taravangian because he's the king of Carbrant. So
Hmm.
so that's probably an
But
important
this
one too.
sounds like he sounds more like a merchant. Like this sounds like a merchant city. You know what I mean? Like apparently there's like I think we got some politics to it. I don't love getting into the politics of cities every time. Like I said, world building isn't my biggest thing I read fantasy for, and I know it is for other people. But we do get some like, hey, it reminds me of Karth of Game of Thrones, where Dany is, where it's very like, hey, we're all about money and trade here, not so much other things. Like we're open to
Yeah.
everybody. Come over here as long as you got money to spend. We're cool with you. So I don't really know. Like, is Yas? No, I don't think Yasna's tied to her family anymore. At least from what I've read. So I won't speculate on that. But why is she Is she trying to get money? What's going on here? Or does he need her? Like what? What's there's interesting stuff going on. She's here for a reason. She's talking to the king. Something's going on. I want to find out more about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that kind of closes out the chapters. So
Yes,
do you
sir.
have any last comments on this section?
From a chapter standpoint, no, I think we covered a lot. Very interesting. I do have a couple things that are like overarching things that I've like taken away from this, and I'll
Your
start
new
with my
theories?
theories, and then I'll start with like overall thoughts of this like section that we read because I think this is really like the introduction. Like, yes, we have the prologue and the
This is
prelude.
the real beginning.
Yeah, but this is like, look, if you don't like these characters, there's a chance you're going to drop off. Or if you don't like what the story that's been set up for this book is, this is where you drop off. I think
You
it's
don't even
interesting.
know.
Yeah, I think it's interesting actually how much he's like not told us. We know nothing still, and I'm about to be 100 pages in. That's crazy. Like I don't
It's a
know
big
where this
book.
book is going at all. Yeah, um, and I think that comes from him introducing the second POV very early on, and jumping around because I think even uh, Game of Thrones, like it takes a while before you leave Winterfell. Like yeah, you get Dany stuff too, but like for the most part, like that book really kicks off with Winterfell. So um, yeah, I liked the intro. I think he was smart to open up with a battle to kind of keep things moving. And then I get why he dropped the I'm trying to steal the soulcaster at the end. Because if not, it's kind of like going back, like you're 5 chapters in and it's kind of like, one guy's in a box, you know, and the other one is like just trying to appease to some lady. So I think that I get why he dropped that. So it's interesting. Lots of world building, very heavy world building. I'll go back to like, so slavery and religion seem to be a huge thing. And then the religion is somehow tied to the slavery and the government. I think this overall story is going to come to come to religion. Like that's going to be its peak, really.
Okay.
But yeah, that's that. And then I will say, okay, so I have a couple theories. You kicked off one, but I'll start with my other one again. Big theory. Hey, Kaladin, Kalak, Shalash,
Yeah.
Shallan.
The whole heralds.
Yeah, the whole heralds, whether it's heritage, family tree thing going on, that they're tied to them. They have to be. They have to be. They have to be. They have to be. I think here's crackpot. I think Kaladin died in that battle.
Okay.
I think he died. I think.
So
I,
that's
I,
the old Kaladin, you think?
what do you mean?
Like you're thinking Kaladin died and this is like a new Kaladin.
I think it's like I don't want to say new, but okay, so we know that the heralds are immortal, right? Like in some aspect or shape or form, they could get rebirthed. And if I think he's tied to the heralds, because you're like, well, like everybody else died, and I'll say that like you threw that out there, so I'm picking off of what you sent me, and you might, I'm not saying like you gave anything away because I don't know, but like everybody did die, and like obviously Kaladin couldn't stop him, so like how did he get taken capture of if he was able to kill the shard bearer? You know what I mean? If he was able to kill a shard bearer, I'm pretty sure he was able to kill anybody else on that battlefield. So he would have gotten away to like
Can you
what
repeat that
did
last part you said about the shard bearer?
if so like all right. Here's what in my head two things could have happened, right? The shard bearer killed everybody else except for Kaladin, and Kaladin killed him. If that's the truth, how did he get captured? You know, who could have captured him if not a shard bearer? Or did more people come out? You know, maybe, right? Or Kaladin died. He couldn't kill the shard bearer, right? And because of his ties to heralds, he was like he came back to life. I don't know, like you know, like something. So those are
Man,
my
I'm
two
getting
options.
excited. I'm getting excited for the later stuff in this book.
Yeah, like I'm just I like I think they're related to the heralds, if not the heralds themselves. So I think I'm just gonna apply the thought of like they could be reborn. They were always reborn, and then he hints at like time and time again this has happened, and he sounds like he's lived lives, you know, not just 19.
Yeah.
Like I don't know yet. Like in Game of Thrones, like someone's 15 and it's like, damn, bro, you're about to see some shit. And like if you make it to 25, whoa, you know. So maybe that's how this world works too. Uh, but yeah, so I'm just really curious. I don't know.
Good theories.
But that's about it, man. Oh, you mentioned them. You texted me about them. The little comments, little sections at the top of the chapters. What are those, and why are they there? Um, I again, I put it into I put my thoughts of the previous prologue and prelude into Reddit, right? And like I had people respond to me and talk to them. They all kept it spoiler free. If so, they covered it. Didn't read it. Um, Someone called them death rattles, which is super cool. I don't know if that's the official name for them, but like, whoa, because obviously these people are dying. It's like what? Oh, subject 10 seconds before death, and they say some interesting things. And I think I didn't plan for it this one, but maybe next one kind of go over. I'm going to go over what they've said and what I think this is. But like the one, and I'll talk about the last one because I think that's the one that I saw. Where is it? Chapter 5. Okay. Here's where I think maybe a Stormlight Archives, right? Stormlight Archives is going. I have seen the end, and I have heard it named the Night of Sorrows, the True Desolation, the Everstorm. Whoa. I'm assuming that this is from a death rattle. Oh, yeah, because it's collected on the first of Non's, blah, 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 15 seconds pre death. Subject was a dark eyed youth of unknown origin. And it sounds like to me that these people are seeing things. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
are they sick? It
So you
says
think they're
samples of
visions?
subject. Something,
Well,
right? Like,
I'll be honest. Maybe I didn't read right. I don't know what they are. I could literally theorize with you. I don't think I know what they are.
and that's what someone said too, because he was talking to me, you know, like, and I was like, oh, like, have you, like, he said something like, I'm on like my sixth reread or something, and I was like,
Oh gosh.
yeah, I'm like, I'm assuming you're still seeing things that you didn't see last time. And he's like, yeah, I'm really focusing in on these death rattles, and that's what caught my attention to it, because like I do pay attention to these things, but like, I mean, you forget about them because it's a line and you're reading like, you know, hundreds of words. So it's like, you know, I did start looking at him a little bit more once he talked about it. And he's like saying I've really theorized from those. He didn't tell me what he was theorizing, but he's theorized from those. Um,
Yeah,
so
I
yeah,
like
like,
what you said. Visions.
yeah, that's what it
They
sounds
might
like.
be
Like,
visions of something coming. Another
mm-hmm.
thing I thought of that was very Wheel of Time was the world ended at one point, and these were the death rattles of that world ending. But I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that. I'd have to. But yeah, like this one, I'm dying, aren't I? Healer, why do you take my blood? So they're being tested on, right? Like someone is monitoring these people. Who is that beside you with his head of lines?
That one.
Interesting.
Okay.
Ooh.
You
I
could
can see,
literally we could literally discuss a lot of these probably a lot later. But
dude. I think
that's
like maybe
very interesting.
I think maybe at the end of the book we should go back. Like we should literally have an episode of like, hey, let's read the death rattles and now that I've read a book, what do I think? And then just each time, just like keep coming back to them and being like, what do we think this is?
Yeah.
So I can see a distant sun, dark and cold, shining in a black sky. Yeah, man. Interesting. Interesting. Whose notes are these? Whose notes are these? Because they're someone's notes.
And it
I
seems to
want
be
to know.
documented well because it's like
Mm-hmm.
dark eyes, time before death.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I'm excited, man. I think I'm getting the hint of the like yeah, sow those seeds of a long story that I won't know about until 6 books in.
Well, I've told you, and I still think this story did what I thought Wheel of Time would do.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think Wheel of Time needed to happen for this series to happen because it
Yeah.
builds a lot on it. Uh, so yeah, no, there's so much, and yeah, I'm excited too. So, anything
So
else you want
where
to add?
where do oh, I guess I can't ask that. Never mind. No, but I had a joke and I forgot to say it, so I have to say it again. I'll have to say it. You were talking about that Kaladin made it to the shattered plains, like so he ended up going where he wanted to, right? But
Yeah.
I would tell you journey before destination, you know what I mean?
Oh my god. Yes, Journey Before Destination.
That's right.
All right.
All right.
Well, thank you. Hopefully, if any of you guys came back and listened to the second episode or are following along, comment below. We'd like to know if there is somebody following along with us. That would be cool. And yeah, Jacob and I are going to discuss kind of the next chapters that we're going to read, and I'll post it in the description if you want to read along for the next episode. But yeah, thank you guys for listening, and we'll be posting hopefully every week what we've
Mm-hmm.
read. And you can also find us on Spotify at Prepare to Read if you want to listen there or just download the episode so you don't have to deal with YouTube. And yeah, that's all.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks. And I would also say, if you're interested, I'm posting my thoughts on the Stormlight Archive Reddit thread too. So I don't know. You'll see my thoughts there also. I don't know my name on Reddit, so maybe that was just stupid to say. Oh well. Thanks for listening,
All
everybody.
right. Thanks, everyone.